In the stillness of a moonlit night, the medieval monastery is cloaked in silence. The world beyond its stout stone walls slumbers in darkness. But within this sacred enclave, a quiet stirring has begun. It is well before dawn, an hour when most souls remain deep in dreams. A single bell tolls softly from the abbey's tower, its gentle bronze note echoing over dew-laden fields and woodlands. This is the call to matins, the night prayer. One by one, monks awaken in their narrow beds, rising without chatter or complaint. They have done this every night for years, and their bodies know the routine by heart. In the communal dormitory, footsteps pad lightly on cold stone floors. The monks move like shadows, each dressed in a simple woolen habit. They do not speak. A rule of silence guides them until daylight. Instead, they communicate in soft gestures, a nod, a faint smile, reserving the hush. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of candle wax and ancient timber beams. Some monks shiver as they leave the warmth of their straw-stuffed mattresses and blankets, but they accept the discomfort with practiced grace. Tonight, as every night, they remove their sleeping caps and take a moment to compose themselves in prayer beside their cots, heads bowed in the faint glow of an oil lamp. A young novice rubs his eyes and tries to shake off drowsiness, remembering that this early devotion is a privilege and duty. Gathering their cloaks and tight against the chill, the brethren make their way through a dim corridor toward the chapel. Their leather sandals whisper against the stones. High-arched windows show a sky of deep blue-black, sprinkled with stars. A waning crescent moon casts pale light through the cloister garden as they pass, illuminating neatly tended herb beds and the silhouette of a solitary oak. An owl hoots from the abbey's belfry before flapping off into the night. Apart from that gentle farewell, all is peaceful. The monks enter the chapel in silence, each man dipping fingers in cool holy water at the entrance and tracing the sign of the cross upon his body. They take their places in the choir stalls, dark wooden benches worn smooth by generations of worship. Their breaths mingle as faint mist in the cold air. The bell's echoes fade, and for a heartbeat there is only silence, profound and reverent. Then the Gregorian chant begins. A single voice, low and sonorous, intones the first Latin verse of a psalm. Another voice joins, and another, until the choir is singing as one. Their chants are unhurried and soft, rising and falling in soothing waves that fill the high vaults of the chapel. Golden candlelight flickers along stone columns, casting dancing shadows across carved saints and painted icons. The monks' voices echo gently. Each note seems to hang in the air before dissolving into the next. Though the words are in Latin, one doesn't need to know their meaning to feel the serenity they carry. It is a lullaby of devotion, offered on behalf of a sleeping world. Time in this pre-dawn ritual feels suspended. The monks alternate between singing and moments of quiet prayer. They stand and bow, then sit again in rhythmic pattern, following traditions laid down centuries earlier. Some close their eyes as they sing, lost in the meditative flow of the psalms. A few candles provide the only light aside from a faint pre-dawn glow, just barely hinting at the eastern windows. The darkness outside is cold and absolute, but inside the chapel there is warmth in their communal song and the soft radiance of flame. Matins flows into lauds, the dawn prayer, as the first pale hint of morning appears. By the time the final verses are sung, that hint has grown into a gentle gray light. The ritual concludes with a final Amen that the monks whisper in unison. They file out of the chapel just as quietly as they came, their souls calmed and prepared for the coming day. In the east, beyond the monastery's fields and the sleeping village nearby, a faint blush of pink begins to warm the horizon. Night's embrace is loosening its hold on the world. As the brothers step back into the courtyard, dawn is on the cusp of breaking. Birds are beginning to stir in the hedgerows. One or two sparrows trill sleepily. The monks head back to their dormitory or directly to the cloister for a brief rest or reflection before the day's labors begin in earnest. Within these walls, they have already been awake and active while others slept. Now a new day quietly announces itself, and soon, beyond the monastery, the wider world will awaken as well. In the humble village not far away, the first rooster crows, and a farmer's day is about to begin. Dawn in the village. A rooster's crow breaks the silence of dawn in the small village nearby. Inside a one-room thatched cottage, a farmer blinks awake on his straw-filled mattress. Thin gray light seeps through the wooden shutters and the gaps in the wattle and daub walls. He draws a wool blanket closer for a moment, savoring the last bit of warmth before the day's toil begins. His wife is already stirring beside him, quietly untangling herself from their sleeping children nestled on a pallet nearby. The air in the cottage is cool and carries the smells of last night's wood smoke and the earthy scent of the floor. A few chickens scratch softly just outside the door, waiting to be let in or fed. From a corner of the room comes the gentle low of the family's cow, tied in the lean-to shed that shares a wall with their home. The farmer sits up and swings his feet onto the earthen floor. He wears the same simple clothes he worked in yesterday, a linen shirt and woolen tunic, both well worn and patched from many repairs. His trousers, held up by a leather belt, are rough spun and stained with soil. These are the only everyday clothes he owns, aside from a slightly nicer vest he keeps for church on Sundays or feast days. He slips his feet into his sturdy leather shoes. They were handmade by the village cobbler long ago, and though scuffed, they have molded to his feet comfortably over time. A quick stretch eases the stiffness in his back. Dawn light paints a pale stripe across the floor, and dust motes dance in the beam as he moves. His first task is to coax life back into the hearth. Kneeling, he rakes the ashes to find any remaining embers from the fire that had warmed the cottage through the night. A faint red glow rewards him. He takes a handful of dry straw and places it over the embers, gently blowing until a wisp of smoke curls upward. Soon, tiny flames flicker, and he feeds them small bits of kindling. Orange light and a little warmth begin to spread. His wife drapes a shawl over her shoulders and joins him, wordlessly taking a clay pitcher and stepping outside to fetch water from the village well. Their youngest child, a toddler, whimpers at the disturbance of the light and sound, but quickly nestles closer to an older sibling and returns to sleep. With the fire coming to life, the farmer adds a larger piece of wood and then turns to other chores. He picks up a wooden pail and steps out into the crisp morning. The village around him is stirring softly. Across the dirt lane, smoke begins to curl from a neighbor's chimney as well. He hears the creak of a door and a muffled voice, another villager greeting the day. The sky is transforming from gray to a tender pink. The outlines of a few oak trees at the village edge emerge in silhouette against the dawn. In the distance, fields stretch out, blanketed in mist. For a moment, the farmer breathes deeply, taking in the cool, damp air and the promise of sunlight. He heads to the shed where their brown cow waits. The cow shifts and moos softly as he approaches. "Good morning, old girl," he murmurs in a kind tone, patting her flank. He places the stool and begins the gentle routine of milking. The steady streams hit the pail with a rhythmic sound in the quiet morning. A barn cat appears and winds around his ankles, hopeful for a dish of warm milk later. As he milks, the farmer's mind wanders over the tasks ahead. Spring has arrived, and with it a flurry of work. In early spring he plowed and sowed the barley and peas. Now in late spring, weeds must be kept at bay in the rows of young crops. Today he plans to hoe between the sprouting stalks in the common field and check the fences around the pasture. He knows that as summer comes, his days will be filled with mowing hay and harvesting grain from dawn till dusk. Each season brings new chores, plowing and planting in spring, shearing sheep as the weather warms, long harvest days in summer, and later the slaughter of pigs and salting of meat in late autumn before winter's rest. But on this gentle morning in May, his focus is simply on the tasks of the moment. Tend the animals, then tend the fields. Milking done, he leads the cow out to a small paddock behind the house. His eldest son, a boy of about 10, is now awake and appears rubbing his eyes at the doorway. The boy knew to rise early. He will help his father in the fields today instead of playing. The farmer hands him the heavy milk pail to carry inside, giving him an approving nod. Inside the cottage, the mother has returned with fresh water and is busy at the hearth. She has added ground oats and a pinch of salt to the bubbling pot hung over the fire, cooking a thin pottage for breakfast. A faint aroma of onions and herbs from yesterday's dinner stew still lingers in the pot, adding flavor to the morning gruel. On a wooden table nearby, a round loaf of dark bread made of rye and barley sits covered by a cloth. She baked it in the community oven the day before, and it will feed the family for a couple of days. She cuts a few thick slices now. When the farmer ducks back through the low door, the warmth and scent of breakfast greet him. He takes the milk pail from his son and pours a portion into a clay cup. This fresh milk is a treat. Much of it will be set aside to churn to butter or make a simple cheese. But this morning, each child will get a small cupful. The older children are awake now, sitting up on their bedding and yawning. In the dim interior, the firelight throws dancing shadows on the walls. The family gathers around the hearth. They begin the day with a quiet prayer, bowing their heads, and Our Father murmured in their local tongue, giving thanks for the food and the new day. Though it is a humble meal, they share it gratefully. Breakfast is simple but hearty enough to fuel their labor. Each person has a wooden bowl of the warm oatmeal pottage, sweetened slightly with a drizzle of honey when they have it, or a few berries gathered last season and dried. They nibble the dense brown bread, using it to scoop porridge. The farmer takes a long sip of small ale from a horn cup. Brewed weak, the ale is safer to drink than the often brackish well water, and provides needed calories. His wife has a cup as well, and even the older children are allowed to drink the mild brew. The little ones enjoy their milk. As they eat, the farmer and his wife exchange a few quiet words about the day's plans, which field he'll work in, which tasks she will handle at home. There is laundry soaking that she means to finish and hang, and vegetables in their small garden that need tending. If time allows, she will spin wool on her spindle this evening, a little each day to eventually weave cloth for new garments. Meal finished, the family says a brief grace, and then the household bustles into action. The sun has edged above the horizon now, casting a gentle light over the village. The farmer dusts off the crumbs from his tunic and stands ready to head out. His wife wraps a shawl around her and prepares to take the younger children to the garden. The oldest boy fetches the hoe and a crude wooden rake, leaning by the doorway. He will walk with his father out to the strips of land they cultivate. Before leaving, the farmer steps over to a small wall shrine, a simple wooden cross hanging near the door. He bows his head and whispers a plea for a good, safe day. Many in this era start their labor with such a quiet prayer, seeking protection and good fortune in work as unpredictable as the weather. Father and son step outside into the full, fresh morning. Other villagers are up and about now. A couple of women carry baskets toward the well, chatting softly. A man passes by, guiding a donkey loaded with empty sacks, likely headed to the mill or fields. They all share a nod in greeting. Life here is communal. Everyone knows each other and cooperates out of necessity. The village consists of only a few dozen souls, and many are kin. Roofs of thatch huddle close together along the single muddy lane. A little further off stands the small stone parish church, its modest bell tower catching the sunlight. On Sundays and feast days, that bell calls them all to Mass, but today is a work day, and the bell remains silent. The farmer and his boy walk toward the fields, falling in step behind neighbors who are also heading out with tools over their shoulders. They pass the village grazing common, where a gaggle of geese and a few pigs root around a trough. The pigs belong to several families. They will be driven into the woods later to forage on acorns once the herder's boy is ready. For now the animals grunt and snuffle contentedly in the cool air. A pair of small girls skip along the path carrying willow baskets, off to collect kindling and mushrooms at the forest edge, under the watch of an elder sibling walking behind. Every able hand, even a child's, has some contribution to make. Leaving the cluster of cottages behind, the open fields spread out before the farmer. They are divided into long strips, some already green with early crops of barley and oats. His strip lies beyond a low hedgerow. Wooden scarecrows stand at intervals, waving tattered cloth in the breeze to discourage hungry crows. He notices with some satisfaction that the seedlings are coming up nicely where he sowed them weeks ago. The earth is moist with dew, promising good growing conditions. At the far end of the field, morning mist is lifting off a brook, revealing grazing cows watched over by a neighbor's daughter. The farmer rolls up his sleeves and begins his work. With his son beside him, he starts hoeing between the neat rows of sprouts to uproot weeds that would steal nutrients from the crops. The soil is soft and dark, releasing an earthy aroma as the hoe bites and turns it. Birdsong has burst forth all around, larks and finches celebrate the morning from the hedges. The farmer finds a steady rhythm. Step, dig, pull, step again. His son follows, gathering the larger weeds into a basket to remove from the field. They work mostly in silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves, and an occasional instruction murmured from father to son. It's a peaceful kind of labor under the young sun. As the morning progresses, the village fully awakens behind them. Every now and then, the breeze carries the faint sound of a smith's hammer from afar or the distant bark of a dog. But out here in the fields, there is a sense of calm focus. The farmer straightens now and then to stretch his back and check the sun's position. It climbs steadily, and the dew has dried from the grass. He pauses to wipe his brow with a sleeve. His stomach reminds him that breakfast was early and light, but midday is not far off. He glances toward the village and can just spy the movement of his wife in their garden, bent over her own work among the rows of beans and cabbages. He knows she will ring their iron triangle or call out when it's time to break for the noon meal. For now, he and his son continue steadily, tending their crops under the ever-brightening sky, content in the routine that marks the start of another day. Morning chants and chores at the monastery. As the sun climbs a little higher, the monastery's daily rhythm continues to unfold. After the early prayers of matins and lauds, the monks have a short respite. Some return briefly to their dormitory to tidy their bedding or sit in private meditation. Others walk quietly in the cloister, fingers moving along their rosaries. The silence of devotion still lingers in the cool morning air. At the center of the cloister garden, a simple fountain splashes gently, a place for ritual washing. A few monks pause there to wash their hands and faces in the chill water, refreshing themselves for the work ahead. They push back the cowls of their habits to feel the dawn breeze, revealing calm faces etched with discipline and peace. Before long, another bell rings out clear and bright, the call to prime, the first hour of the daytime prayers. Gathering once more, the monks assemble in the chapter house, a chamber just off the cloister. Shafts of golden morning light now filter through the narrow windows, illuminating motes of dust in the air. Here the community meets to listen to a short reading of their rule and to receive the day's assignments. The abbot or prior, seated in a carved wooden chair, reads softly from a heavy parchment book, words of guidance on humility, charity, and obedience. Each monk listens with head bowed. Afterwards, in a gentle voice, the abbot gives out tasks. Brother Matthew is to tend the vegetable gardens. Brother Bernard will help in the kitchen. Young Brother Stephen is assigned to the scriptorium to continue copying a manuscript. Every monk, from the oldest to the novices, has a role to play in the work of God and the upkeep of the abbey. Prime concludes with a short prayer and a blessing for the labors to come. The monks disperse, each quietly setting about his duties. In the kitchen, a pair of monks stoke the morning's fire in a great stone hearth. Large cauldrons are already hanging, heating water for porridge. They slice coarse bread for the later meal and check the stores of beans, dried fish, and root vegetables. The smells of wood smoke and baking bread begin to drift through the halls. In the infirmary, the monk responsible for tending the sick checks on an elderly brother with a frail cough, adjusting his blanket and giving him a spoonful of herbal tonic. In the gardens outside, two monks in rolled up sleeves turn the soil in neat rows. They pause to pull early weeds that have sprung up around the lettuces and cabbages. Their garden tools clink softly, and they work in companionable silence, broken only by the occasional chirp of a sparrow. Within the scriptoria, the writing room, quills already scratch on parchment. Brother Stephen, the young monk with the day's copying duty, sits at a wooden desk by a window to catch the best light. Sunshine falls on the Latin texts spread before him. He carefully dips his feather quill into oak gall ink and continues copying a page of the Gospels in precise, flowing script. Each letter he forms is an act of devotion. Beside him, little pots of red and blue pigment stand ready for illuminating initials. The room carries the faint scents of ink, vellum, and drying paint. Stephen's lips move silently as he writes, perhaps reciting the words of Scripture under his breath. The scriptorium is hushed save for the soft scratch of pens and the occasional gentle stretch of an older monk to relieve stiff muscles. Shafts of light illuminate dust motes and the intent faces of those preserving knowledge by their patient work. Meanwhile, a bell chimes the hour for terce, the third hour of the day, mid-morning. The monks pause in their tasks wherever they are. Many will head to the church for a brief prayer, or mass if it is to be celebrated now. Brother Matthew in the garden hears the bell and sets down his spade. He takes a moment to wipe his brow and admire the sky, now a clear blue, and the neatly tended rows he's completed. In the kitchen, the cooks also pause, turning down the fire so they can join the community at prayer. The rhythm of monastic life weaves work and worship seamlessly together. Short prayer offices throughout the day remind everyone that their labor itself is offered to God. After terce, the monks resume their duties until the next prayer time. By now, the sun is well up, and sunlight pours through open doorways. In the orchard beyond the cloister, fruit trees show new green leaves. A couple of monks head there with pruning hooks to tend the young branches, perhaps exchanging smiles at the promise of apples and pears in months to come. Others collect baskets of herbs from the garden to dry for medicine and cooking. From outside, the abbey walls comes the faint sound of village life carrying on, the distant low of cattle, a cart creaking along the road, and far-off voices. Within the monastery, however, there is a prevailing quiet and sense of order. Each brother knows his task and pursues it diligently but without rush, mindful of keeping a peaceful spirit. A light breeze wafts through an open cloister archway, bringing in the scent of fresh grass. A few swallows have made their nests under the eaves. They swoop through the open courtyard, and one monk briefly pauses his sweeping to watch their graceful flight with a smile. In a convent not far from these monks, a similar pattern of life unfolds among the nuns. At this hour, those sisters might be carding wool, teaching local children their letters, or embroidering linens for the church altar. Work mingled with prayer, just as with their male counterparts. The nuns gathered at dawn for their lauds, and now hum hymns softly as they spin thread or grind medicinal herbs. Their voices and laughter are rarely heard outside their cloister, but inside, their community is lively and warm. Both monks and nuns live by the cycle of bells and seasons, dedicating each small daily action to a higher purpose. Back at the monastery, the morning inches toward midday. Soon it will be time for sext, the noon prayer, and the main meal of the day. The monks begin to wrap up their tasks. Brother Stephen carefully cleans his quill and covers the inkwell, setting aside the parchment to dry. In the fields just beyond the abbey, lay workers who help with heavier labor start to gather their tools, for they too know the convent's schedule and anticipate the dinner bell. The monastery's great kitchen emits savory smells now. A vegetable pottage simmering with herbs, perhaps a bit of salted fish for protein. The community prepares to come together again, to pray and then dine in silence, listening to holy readings as they eat. The shadows under the cloister walkway shorten as the sun nears its zenith, and a gentle anticipation builds in the quiet industry of the abbey. Another half day of humble work and devotion is nearly complete, and the monks, though physically hungry, are spiritually nourished by their morning's routine, a morning in town. While prayers are whispered in cloisters and plows cleave the distant fields, a medieval town is also coming to life with the morning light. This particular town is small but bustling, surrounded by stout walls with a guard at the gate and organized around a busy market square. At first light, the town's church bells peal, a sound that bounces along narrow streets and stone houses. These bells mark the dawn and call the faithful to early mass. Some townsfolk cross themselves or say a quick prayer at home as the bells ring, while a few slip into the parish church to attend the brief service before work. By the time the sun's rays slant over the rooftops, shopkeepers and craftsmen are opening their shutters and doors, ready for the day's trade. On a cobbled side street near the central square stands the blacksmith's workshop. The smith, a sturdy man with broad shoulders and arms strengthened by years at the forge, is already at work. His shop occupies the ground floor of a timber-framed house. Above it, wooden beams overhang the street, supporting the living quarters where his family sleeps. This morning, as on most mornings, his apprentice had risen earlier than him to stir the coals and pump the bellows until the forge glowed hot. Now the wide double doors of the smithy are thrown open to let in the fresh air. From within comes the steady clang, hiss, clang of iron being shaped on the anvil. Sparks fly in brief showers, fading on the dirt floor. The rhythmic hammering echoes down the lane, one of the familiar sounds that tell the town it is truly awake. Inside the workshop, orange firelight illuminates a scene of focused activity. The blacksmith grips a glowing piece of iron with tongs, placing it on the anvil. With measured, practiced swings, he strikes it with a heavy hammer. Each strike sends a clear, ringing note through the air. His face, lightly smudged with soot, glistens with sweat despite the morning's coolness. Beside him, the apprentice works the bellows, steady and strong, feeding the forge with blasts of air to keep the heat fierce. The boy steals quick glances at his master's technique, learning with each blow. Today, the smith is fashioning a batch of nails and repairing a metal plowshare for a farmer who has come in from a nearby village. That farmer stands by, cap in hand, watching respectfully and marveling at how the formless red-hot metal gradually takes on a useful shape under the smith's skillful guidance. The smithy smells of charcoal, hot metal, and a tang of burning horn from the last time he shoed a horse. Tools of the trade hang on the walls, hammers of various sizes, pincers, rasps, and horseshoes awaiting use. In one corner, iron bars and scraps lie in a neat stack, raw material for future creations. Though it is work that requires strength, there is artistry here as well. With a few final strikes, the blacksmith forms the nail's head and then cools the finished piece in a wooden trough of water. Shh! The iron hisses as steam curls upward. He sets the hardened nail aside with a small pile of its brothers, ready for the carpenter to purchase later for building repairs. The farmer's plowshare is next. The iron blade had been nicked and dulled by rocks in the field. The smith heats the metal until it's cherry red, then hammers it against the anvil's horn to straighten and sharpen it. Sparks fly like tiny stars, and the farmer's lined face eases into a grin, knowing his plow will cut clean furrows again. By the time the repair is finished, the iron blade gleams and is much improved. The blacksmith quenches it and inspects the edge with a critical eye, running a calloused thumb along it. Satisfied, he nods to the farmer. They exchange a few words about payment, perhaps some coins, or a trade of labor or grain, as is often done. The farmer hefts the plowshare and thanks the smith for his fine work. With that, the countryman heads off, leading his donkey and cart through the streets back toward his farm, while the smith turns to the next task at hand. Outside, the town's day grows busier. Along the streets, other craftsmen have begun their routines. Next door, the sweet aroma of fresh bread wafts from the baker's open window. He was arguably the first awake of all. Hours before dawn, he had his oven fired and dough rising. Now round loaves and twisty pretzels cool on his sill, and townsfolk stop by to buy their daily bread. Across the way, a cooper rolls an oak barrel out of his workshop, checking its hoops, while a pair of shoemaker's apprentices stitch leather uppers to soles by the light of their doorway. The street is narrow, just wide enough for a cart, and already a merchant's wagon creaks through, laden with sacks of flour from nearby mills. The town itself is a lively patchwork of sights and sounds. Timber houses, some with whitewashed wattle and daub between dark beams, crowd close together. Upper floors jut out, nearly touching those of houses opposite, such that a person could almost shake hands from one window to another across the lane. Beneath, shop signs hang above doorways, a painted boot for the cobbler, a mortar and pestle for the apothecary, a bright shield for the armorer's smithy farther down. Many residents both live and work in the same building. The ground level is their shop or workshop, and the family quarters are upstairs, connected by steep ladders or narrow stairways. This arrangement means the clatter of work and domestic life mix together. Children's laughter and scolding mothers can be heard alongside the rasp of a saw or the clang of metal. Sanitation in the town is rudimentary. A central gutter runs along the street, meant to carry away rainwater and waste. People must watch their step, especially after households toss out yesterday's wash water or slop. But the townsfolk are accustomed to the grime and smells. To them, the odor of tannery vats or fishmongers' stalls is simply part of the tapestry of daily life. On this bright morning, those less pleasant scents are tempered by the fragrance of baking bread and the clean breeze that occasionally gusts through, flapping the laundry hung from upstairs windows. Not far from the smithy is the heart of town, the market square. Even on an ordinary weekday, A few vendors set up tables there to sell produce, meat, and wares. Under awnings of striped canvas, a butcher arranges cuts of pork and mutton for sale, swatting away flies with a twig brush. A pair of women from the countryside stand by with baskets of fresh vegetables and eggs to barter. Their quiet calls of carrots, onions add to the gentle din. Nearby, a potter displays jugs and bowls of clay, each one glazed in earthy greens and browns. Customers wander the stalls, examining goods, occasionally haggling in low voices. The atmosphere is busy, but not frantic. This is a routine part of life, and neighbors take time to greet one another and swap news as they shop. The market square's cobbles, warmed by the sun, are dotted with pigeons pecking hopefully at stray grain. The blacksmith's wife arrives at the square with a small basket on her arm. She has finished her own morning chores at home and left their eldest daughter minding the younger children. Now she is here to purchase a few items needed for their household and perhaps to gossip a bit with friends. First, she stops at the baker's stall under the arcade to buy a couple of white rolls, special treats beyond the rye bread she bakes at home, but useful if they expect a guest or want to honor Sunday. Then, at the dairy seller's cart, she selects a small wedge of cheese. Coins are scarce, so she mostly trades. Today, she offers 2 of her own chicken's eggs in exchange. The transaction is made with a smile and a nod. This informal economy of barter is common, supplementing coin when money is tight. As she circles the market, the blacksmith's wife chats with a neighbor about the upcoming Saints' Day festival. The patron saint of their town's church will be celebrated next week, which means a day of rest from work and an evening of communal feasting and dancing in the square. The women share anticipation of the break in routine. The wife mentions she's been mending her husband's second-best tunic so he can look presentable at Mass on that day. They also speak of a small pilgrimage group that passed through the town recently, bound for a distant shrine. Travelers often bring interesting tales and occasionally relics or trinkets to trade. The memory of those pilgrims sparks a brief daydream in the wife's mind of far-off holy places, but she soon returns to the present as she counts her eggs and cheese, ensuring she has what she needs. By late morning, the blacksmith has finished the most urgent tasks. He pauses to wipe sweat from his brow with a rag. The apprentice takes advantage of the lull to drink deeply from a jug of water. They have been working for hours, and the heat of the forge is intense. Stepping to the doorway, the smith pushes open the shutters wider to let the breeze flow in. He looks down the street toward the square. He can see the tops of market stalls and the gentle bustle of townsfolk moving about. A few children run by, playing a game of tag, their laughter echoing off the walls. The smith allows himself a small smile at the familiar scene. On the wall near his shop door hangs a wooden sign emblazoned with a black iron hammer, the symbol of the Blacksmith's Guild. He is a proud member of that guild, as was his father before him. The guild ensures that only trained masters like him can sell wares in town, and it upholds the quality of craftsmanship. They also provide support if a member falls ill and help train young apprentices. It was at the guild hall on another street that he had paid his dues and received his license to practice. Sometimes he attends meetings in the evening where guild brothers discuss prices or plan charitable donations, or occasionally organize a guild feast on their patron saint's day. It gives him a sense of belonging and pride to be part of this community of tradesmen. From a nearby belfry, the town clock bell begins to toll the hour. The smith counts the rings, 1, 2, 3, up to 6 times. It is now about mid-morning, by modern reckoning 9 o'clock, though medieval folk don't use hours in the same way. This bell is a signal to some artisans to take a short break or change tasks. For the blacksmith, it means he should finish any long work soon if he wants to have his midday meal on time. He has one more customer this morning, a local cartwright who needs some iron bolts and has come by the shop. The smith cheerfully greets the fellow and goes to fetch the requested pieces from his stock, while the apprentice tidies the workbench and the bellows wheeze to a rest. The smell of cooling metal and the quieter interlude are welcome. Through the open door, the blacksmith's wife returns, her errands done. She hands her husband a small bundle, fresh rolls and cheese to brighten their noonday meal. He thanks her, and they share a brief, affectionate glance, both a bit soot-smudged from their respective labors. Their children will be hungry soon, and she heads upstairs to prepare the table. The smith finishes with the cartwright, who departs gratefully with his new iron bolts. It's nearly time to shutter the smithy for the midday break. All over town, shopkeepers and laborers are thinking of the same thing: the pause in work when they can sit, eat, and rest before the second half of the day commences. The morning in town has been full of industry, but now the church bell will likely ring again soon, signaling sext and the welcome dinner hour. Midday, rest and meals. The sun now reaches its zenith, bathing the medieval world in bright light and gentle warmth. Across all walks of life, midday is a time to pause and refresh body and spirit. Fields, workshops, cloisters, and great halls alike experience a lull as people turn to their noontime meal. On the open farmland, the peasant's morning toil gives way to a well-earned break. The farmer and his son retreat to the edge of their field, where a lone oak tree casts a patch of shade on the grass. They settle down gratefully, the father rolling his shoulders to ease the ache from hours of hoeing. From a leather sack, he withdraws their simple lunch. It consists of the same dense rye bread from breakfast, now a bit drier but still filling, and a small wheel of hard cheese carefully wrapped in cloth. There's also an onion and a handful of radishes pulled from their garden early this morning. The boy's eyes brighten at the sight of the cheese. It's a treasured addition, made from their cow's milk and saved for such moments. They divide the food between them. Using his belt knife, the farmer cuts thick slices of bread and cheese, assembling them into a rustic sandwich with a few onion slices for bite. He and his son chew slowly, savoring each morsel as a cool breeze stirs the tree leaves overhead. Around them, a few other villagers working nearby fields have similarly paused. One can hear low voices carry across the land as neighbors chat amiably during their respite. Laughter even drifts from a group of women who have been gleaning in the next field. They share a joke as they pass around a skin of small beer. The mood at midday is unhurried and congenial. The farmer takes a long drink from a wooden flask of ale that his wife brewed at home. It's tepid by now, but still satisfying. He lies back on the grass for a moment, placing his hat over his face to shield his eyes from the sun. His son, stomach full, stretches out next to him. For a short while, they may even drift into a light nap, a common practice. In summer, when work started so early, the chorus of cicadas and the distant babble of the brook create a lulling background hum. In this gentle interlude, the hardships of life recede. There is only the warm earth beneath them, the sky above, and the simple contentment of a meal shared. Back within the town's walls, midday brings a pause in the artisan's labor as well. In the blacksmith's home, which sits just above his workshop, the family gathers for their dinner. The smith and his apprentice shut the smithy's doors, banking the forge for now. Up the narrow stairs they go, where the table has been set by the smith's wife. It's a sturdy oak table in a small upstairs room with one window overlooking the street. The shutters are propped open to invite a hopeful breeze. They sit on benches, and the smith's wife ladles out bowls of pottage, thick stew made from barley, peas, and some bits of salted pork reheated from last night's supper. She also proudly presents the treats she acquired this morning: fresh white rolls from the baker and a little wedge of sharp cheese. The children's faces light up at the sight of the fine white bread, a step above their usual fare. They tear off pieces to dip in the savory stew. The family bows heads briefly as the smith says grace, thanking God for their meal and the prosperity of their household. Then the room fills with the gentle sounds of a family eating and conversing. They talk about the day so far. The smith recounts the farmer who came for the plow repair, and his wife shares news from the market gossip. Perhaps she mentions seeing the miller's wife, who just had a new baby, or a traveling tinker setting up shop by the inn, promising to fix pots next week. The children giggle when their mother mimics the lively calls of the market sellers. From outside, muted noises drift in. A church bell ringing the call for sext at the town church. Merchants in the square packing up their stalls. A pair of dogs barking at a passing cart. In this humble home above the smithy, the family enjoys a moment of togetherness. The hearty stew warms their bellies, and the roll and cheese add a note of celebration to an otherwise ordinary day. When everyone has eaten, the wife pours each a cup of watered ale. They sip slowly, relaxing. The smith leans back and lets out a content sigh. His youngest child crawls into his lap, and he absently strokes the toddler's hair. The apprentice, who is treated like part of the family, thanks the mistress of the house for the meal and helps clear the wooden bowls. There may be time for the smith to rest for a quarter hour, perhaps even dozing on that bench in a patch of sunlight, before the demands of the forge call again. For now, the close air of the little room is fragrant with stew and bread, and filled with a peaceful quiet as the family savors the last moments of their break. Within the stone monastery, midday is marked with solemnity and routine. The bell in the abbey tower tolls, announcing sext, the 6th hour. Monks gather once more in the chapel, voices chanting a short office, giving thanks at the day's midpoint. After these brief prayers, they proceed to the refectory, the dining hall of the monastery. It is a long room with wooden tables laid out in parallel rows. Sunlight streams in from high windows, falling on the plain but well-scrubbed tabletops. The monks enter in order, each standing silently behind his seat. At a signal from the abbot's table, All murmur a blessing and sit in unison. No one speaks a word. According to the rule, meal times are observed in holy silence. Today's meal in the monastery is simple and nourishing. Earthenware bowls are filled with a thick vegetable broth, studded with carrots, leeks, and barley. It is lightly seasoned with herbs from the garden. Alongside, each monk has a hunk of coarse bread. There is also a small portion of freshwater fish for each, caught from the river and preserved with a light salting. It is a Friday, and thus a day of abstinence from meat. A cup of watered wine or weak ale sits by each setting, just enough to quench thirst. The food is plain by design, meant to sustain but not to tempt with indulgence. As the monks begin to eat, a single voice breaks the silence, not in conversation, but in edification. On a little raised pulpit stands a designated reader, a fellow monk who reads aloud from a holy book or a saint's life story. His gentle voice carries over the sound of wooden spoons against bowls. He might be reading from the scriptures, or perhaps the teachings of an early church father, offering spiritual nourishment alongside the physical. All other monks listen quietly as they spoon broth and chew bread. If one monk needs something, an extra slice of bread or more water, he does not ask outright, but instead makes a subtle sign with his hand, trained in the monastery's sign language for silence. A brother serving as attendant notices and nods, quietly fetching the needed item. The atmosphere in the refectory is peaceful and reflective. Sunlight and shadow dapple the long tables. The only sounds are the soft clink of pottery, the rustle of robes, and the calm cadence of the reader's Latin recitation. When the meal is finished, each monk remains in place until the abbot gives a final prayer of thanks. All rise together. They will file out as they came, with gratitude and without wasting a scrap of food. Some will carry any leftovers to the abbey's almonry, where the poor at the gate might receive bread or soup later. The monks' midday break is brief. Soon they will return to work or study until the next prayers call them again. Yet this shared silent meal reinforces their bond as a community and provides a moment of rest in body and soul. In the grand castle hall, midday dinner is anything but silent. It is the main meal of the day for the noble household, and is treated as a daily event of some ceremony. When the chapel service for sext concludes, the lord and lady make their way to the great hall, where long tables have been arranged in a U shape. At the center of the high table sits the lord and lady with their closest companions or high-ranking guests, while at the lower tables sit knights, ladies-in-waiting, and honored servants. Many members of the household and entourage join the meal. This is not an intimate family affair, but a gathering of the Lord's family in the broad medieval sense, including all who depend on his livery. Servants bustle to and fro, carrying platters and pitchers. Before dining begins, a ritual unfolds. Basins of scented water are brought out so that the nobles may wash their hands. Pages carry these silver basins and hold thick linen towels for the lord, lady, and guests to dry their fingers. Cleanliness and courtesy go hand in hand. Only once the Lord has taken his seat and offered a short grace is the meal officially underway. Courses are then brought out in procession. First, trenchers of bread are set as plates, sturdy slices of yesterday's bread to soak up juices. Then come soups and pottages, perhaps a fragrant beef broth for this day, ladled into each trencher. The lord is served first, with deference, then the lady, and so on down the table according to rank. They eat with spoons and use the bread as both plate and utensil, for forks are not commonly used yet, except perhaps two-pronged carving forks wielded by servers. After the soup, more substantial dishes arrive. Roasted meats are the centerpiece. Today, a whole rabbit pie and several game hens roasted with herbs have been prepared since the Lord's hunting party brought in fresh game yesterday. The pie's crust is golden and flaky, filled with rabbit, eggs, and onions. It's carved and served in generous wedges. The hens are presented on a platter garnished with parsley, and a servant deftly cuts portions for the high table. Accompanying these are bowls of garden vegetables stewed with spices and a thick gravy boat of peppery sauce known as cameline for adding flavor. The castle residents eat heartily, but with practiced manners, taking small bites, conversing politely, and occasionally sharing a light laugh at a jester's quip. Yes, at the far end of the hall, a jester or troubadour might be present, perhaps not in full performance mode, as during a feast, but still providing a bit of entertainment. A lute's soft melody threads through the background as a musician strums a gentle tune. Now and then, a witty storyteller in colorful garb steps forward to recite a short fable or amusing anecdote to lighten the company's mood. The nobility and their guests listen with smiles while they dine, appreciative of the talent, though they keep their responses mild and dignified. Louder revelry is saved for special occasions. At this daily dinner, everything proceeds in an orderly, civilized fashion. As the meal winds on, through multiple removes, courses, the lady of the castle might nibble a candied plum or two from a small dish of sweetmeats that has been set near her. A third course of light treats, perhaps cheese, fruit, and honey cakes, marks the end of the feast. Everyone has eaten well. Before anyone rises, the chaplain at the Lord's nod offers a closing grace, thanking God for the bounty. Once again, basins are brought for hand washing, as fingers have been sticky with juices and sauces. The linen towels now carry traces of spice and grease as they are collected by pages. The high table's leftovers, barely touched in their abundance, are discreetly gathered by servants. Some of these will go to the castle's less exalted residents, or even be distributed at the gate to the poor who know to come after the bells. In the hall, people push back benches and stand. A satisfied murmur of conversation fills the air as the lord and lady exchange pleasantries with those nearest them. The hall, moments ago filled with the clatter of dining, is now abuzz with genteel voices. One by one, the nobles file out to enjoy a leisurely pause before afternoon duties or amusements. Servants swoop in to clear trestle tables and sweep away crumbs, ever efficient. The great hearth's fire crackles on, scenting the hall with wood smoke and roasting drippings, even as the space empties out. Midday has been kind to everyone. Under the oak tree, the peasant family savors a few more minutes of rest, feeling the pleasant heaviness of a meal in their bellies before returning to the soil. In town, the smith's household shares a rare moment of quiet contentment above the busy street. At the monastery, monks step out into the sunlight of the cloister, walking off their meal in contemplative silence, stomachs filled and spirits ready for the next prayers. And in the castle, Nobles and retainers depart the dining hall refreshed, the lord already dreaming of the hunt, and the lady planning her afternoon of gentle pastimes. The sun begins to tilt just past its highest point, and the tide of daily life resumes once more, each person carrying the memory of that brief midday respite as a small comfort into the latter half of the day. Afternoon in the fields. The shadows begin to lengthen slightly as the afternoon progresses. Out in the fields, the peasant wipes the last crumbs from his lips and rouses himself from his short rest. Work must resume. With a soft grunt, he pushes himself to his feet and offers a hand to his young son. Together they gather their tools, the hoe, the rake, and head back to the rows of crops waiting to be tended. The sun is strong, bathing the landscape in a bright golden light. Birds have quieted in the midday heat, and a languid stillness lies over the countryside. But the farmer knows the day's labor is only half done. They return to the task of weeding. The soil is drier now under the high sun, and occasionally the farmer pauses to wipe sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. His son picks up a wicker basket of weeds they pulled earlier and carries it further down the field to dump on a compost pile. It's tiring work for a child, but he is learning the family trade early, as all peasant children do. To break the monotony, the farmer hums a simple tune, a folk song his own father taught him while working these same fields years ago. The melody is low and comforting. His son listens and soon hums along softly, the notes carrying lightly on the warm breeze. The song is about the coming of rain and a good harvest, a hopeful refrain that lifts their spirits a little under the glare of the sun. As time wears on, the farmer alternates tasks to use different muscles and maintain his pace. When the weeding is done in one plot, he turns to mending a fence along the pasture. Using a mallet, he drives a loose wooden stake back into the ground and ties off a sagging section of wattle fencing. Such maintenance is constant. If not a fence, then a thatch patch on the cottage roof or a broken tool handle to fix in the evening. The rhythm of peasant life includes ceaseless upkeep of the basic tools and structures that support survival. Yet these tasks, though physically demanding, are done almost instinctively, part of a cycle he has known all his life. From time to time, another villager working nearby calls out a friendly remark, and the farmer straightens to exchange a few words across the hedgerow. They might chat briefly about how well the crops are growing, or remark on the heat. One mentions that if the fair weather holds, the hay cutting will begin next week in the meadow. They share a bit of friendly commiseration about the hard work ahead, but also genuine gratitude that this year's growth looks promising. After a minute, both men chuckle and bend back to work, knowing idle chatter won't finish the chores. On certain days, the farmer might have different afternoon duties. Throughout the farming year, tasks rise and fall with the seasons. In harvest time, the afternoon would be filled with the back-breaking rush of scything wheat or binding sheaves, racing to bring in the grain before any turn in the weather. In late autumn, afternoons might be spent wading into cold ponds to pull up reeds or leading pigs into the oak woods to forage fallen acorns, fattening them for winter butchering. But on this pleasant late spring day, the work is steady and unurgent, tending to growing plants and repairing odds and ends. The farmer's mind wanders occasionally to upcoming events, a saint's day in a week, which will mean a day of rest and a modest celebration at the village green. He smiles to himself, recalling last year's dancing and ale. Such little joys punctuate the long workdays and give everyone something to look forward to. The sun drifts slowly westward, and the heat begins to soften. The farmer notices the quality of light changing, the bright white of midday easing toward a gentler amber glow. He knows it's still a couple of hours until sunset, but already the notion of evening brings relief. He shares a look with his son, who is visibly tired but still plugging away, pulling weeds along the last furrow. "Almost done," the farmer says quietly, ruffling the boy's sweaty hair. They both take a long drink from the water skin to stay hydrated. For the final stretch of the afternoon, the farmer decides to begin digging a new strip for their vegetable patch behind the cottage. He and his boy walk back to their yard, where the wife has been at her own labors. The garden behind their cottage is a mix of necessity and care. Neat rows of beans staked with sticks, clumps of medicinal herbs like sage and thyme, and a border of marigolds to discourage pests. Picking up a spade, the farmer cuts into a patch of untilled earth next to the existing beds. He turns the soil methodically, breaking clumps and tossing aside stones. Each shovelful exposes rich brown dirt, ready to be planted with a new crop of turnips. His wife pauses her task of hanging laundry on a line and comes over with a jug of water for them, freshly drawn and cool from the well. The family exchanges smiles, and for a few moments, husband and wife work side by side, chatting quietly about how tall the corn in the common field is getting, and wondering if the old cow will calve soon. Their toddler totters about at their feet, trying to help by patting the earth with a stick. It's a homely, sweet scene of domestic industry under the afternoon sun. Soon enough, the patch is dug. The farmer's muscles ache and his son's cheeks are flushed, but there is satisfaction in seeing the cleared plot. He knows that each small improvement, each weed pulled, each fence fixed, each garden bed turned, adds up to the welfare of his household. As the afternoon draws toward its close, he glances at the sky. A few wispy clouds catch the sun's lowering rays. The village church bell may ring vespers before long. One or two neighbors have already begun herding their goats and cows back from the pasture toward home. He can hear a distant bleating and the faint call of the cowherd's horn. The farmer takes a deep breath of the warm air, filled with the scent of earth and cut grass. Another day's work is nearly in the books, and soon it will be time to return to the hearth. With tools in hand and his family by his side, he feels the quiet pride of having labored well and the gentle tug of well-earned rest on the horizon. Guild craftsman in the afternoon. In the town, the afternoon sun slants into the narrow lanes, making patterns of light and shadow on the cobbles. The blacksmith's forge has been relit after the family's noontime break. Once again, the ring of hammer on anvil punctuates the warm, dusty air of the workshop. The smith and his apprentice have returned to their tasks, muscles refreshed, and spirits bolstered by a good meal. Still, the heat inside the smithy is intense. The forge glows yellow-white, and waves of warmth ripple out each time the bellows is pumped. The blacksmith has shed his outer tunic, working in a sweat-damp linen shirt with sleeves rolled up. His leather apron protects him from stray sparks. The apprentice, youthful energy renewed, works diligently at his side, ready to fetch tools or tend to the fire on command. Their first order of afternoon business is fulfilling a promise from the morning, a bundle of iron nails requested by the town carpenter. Using lengths of wrought iron heated in the coals, the smith methodically hammers out nail after nail. He taps the four sides of each shaft to form a square, then deftly flips the glowing piece upright to peen a flat head. Each finished nail is plunged with a hiss into a bucket of water at his feet. The apprentice lines them up on the workbench, counting to ensure they have the 24 nails ordered. Not long after, the carpenter himself arrives, wiping wood shavings from his hands as he steps into the smithy. He's greeted by a rush of heat and the metallic scent of forge smoke. The smith looks up from his anvil and grins. "Your nails are ready, good friend," he says, using a pair of tongs to pick up the still warm metal pieces and drop them into a small sack. The carpenter and blacksmith chat a moment about their trades. Perhaps the carpenter mentions a new door he's building for the inn and how these nails will secure its planks. They exchange the goods for a fair price, or maybe a credit to be paid after the harvest. With a friendly wave, the carpenter goes on his way, and the smith returns to his labor. Next, the blacksmith turns to another common task of the afternoon, shoeing a horse. A farmer from the outskirts has led in a sturdy brown mare with a loose shoe. Out in front of the workshop, in the shade of a high-timbered eave, the smith calms the horse with a firm but gentle hand, running his palm along her flank. Horses are often uneasy with the smells and sounds of the forge, but this mare has been here before and snorts patiently. The blacksmith picks up her hoof, clamping it between his knees. With the apprentice's help, he pries off the bent iron shoe. Back at the anvil, he reheats and hammers it back into shape, or if it's too worn, selects a new ready-made shoe from his stock. He checks the fit against the mare's hoof, trimming the hoof slightly with a curved blade to ensure a level set. Then, positioning the shoe, he nails it in place with short, sharp nails made for this purpose. The rhythmic tink of his hammer driving the nails home is soothingly regular. The mare only flinches slightly, but the smith murmurs reassuringly and finishes quickly. Soon, the horse is fitted with 4 secure shoes once more. The farmer thanks the smith and pays, perhaps in small coin or sometimes in kind, a biscuit of produce or a promise of help repairing the smith's own roof at some point. Such exchanges maintain goodwill and mutual support among townsfolk and villagers. With the last customer of the hour gone, the smith decides to use the remaining afternoon to train his apprentice in the art of forging. Inside the smithy, the air is still hot and shimmering, but the sun outside has begun to ease, casting longer shadows. The blacksmith draws out a fresh rod of iron and cuts a short length. He lets the apprentice place it in the coals and work the bellows. "Watch the color," the smith instructs quietly. Together they observe as the dull iron turns red, then orange, then a bright, almost white yellow. At that ideal temperature, the master says, "Now," and the boy, with tongs, lifts it to the anvil. Under the smith's guidance, the apprentice attempts to fashion a simple hook, an item used frequently for hanging pots or tools. His strokes with the hammer are a bit hesitant at first. Sparks jump with each blow. The blacksmith stands by, arms crossed but eyes keen, offering occasional pointers. Strike squarely. Yes, good. So now bend it over the anvil's horn. Use your strength. The boy's tongue peeks out in concentration as he uses a smaller hammer to curl the hot iron into a hook shape around the anvil's curved horn. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it's serviceable. He reheats the piece and refines the curve. The master craftsman gives an encouraging nod. By the time the hook is quenched in water, the apprentice's face is beaming with pride beneath the soot smudges. The smith claps him on the shoulder and smiles. "Not bad at all for your first hook," he says warmly. The boy swells with accomplishment. In this way, knowledge is passed down through patient practice and the wisdom of an experienced mentor. All through the street, similar scenes of craft and instruction unfold. At the nearby weaving house, a mother shows her daughter how to work the shuttle on the loom, the rhythmic thunk of wood echoing out the door. In the stone yard by the town gate, an old mason oversees his apprentices as they chip away at blocks of sandstone, teaching them how to carve a proper arch keystone. The town thrives on this steady transmission of skills. Guilds formalize it, binding masters and apprentices in contracts, but the heart of it is the daily hands-on learning in workshops and yards. By late afternoon, the blacksmith and his apprentice begin tidying up the smithy. The hardest tasks are done, and the smith is mindful of not starting a big project so close to day's end. They organize the tools, hang the hammers back on their pegs, sweep up metal filings and bits of charcoal. The forge fire is allowed to die down to coals. In the quieter moments now, the smith can feel the pleasant fatigue in his arms. He's satisfied with the day's output, satisfied customers, completed orders, and an apprentice one lesson wiser. Through the workshop door, he notices the quality of light has changed. It's more golden, signaling the approach of the evening. A slight breeze picks up, ventilating the space with relief. He steps outside and sees other shopkeepers beginning to close their shutters or sweep their stoops. The town's day of commerce and craft is winding toward its close. In some towns, a bell or a town crier signals the end of the workday as dusk nears, a reminder to bank fires and observe the evening curfew for safety. Here, the church bell tolls once, a gentle reminder that Vespers is approaching. The blacksmith's wife calls down from the upstairs window that supper will be prepared soon. He nods and shares a final task with his apprentice, ensuring the fire is fully safe. They shovel ash over the remaining embers and double-check that nothing could spark a flame in the night. It wouldn't do to have a stray coal ignite a blaze on the street after they've left. This done, the smith pats the apprentice on the back and suggests he wash up. Another day's honest labor in the guild is almost concluded. They will soon join the flow of townsfolk heading home through streets that are cooling under the evening sky, ready to rest and enjoy what remains of the daylight with their families. A noble at leisure in the afternoon. In the early afternoon, the castle's courtyard comes alive with preparations for the lord's favored pastime, the hunt. The lord, having changed into riding clothes, leather boots, a light tunic, and gloves, stands by as stable hands lead out the horses. A pair of sleek greyhounds strains at their leashes, sensing the excitement. Nearby, a falconer cradles a hooded peregrine falcon on his gauntleted arm, the bird calm and still under its leather hood. The hunting party will consist of the Lord, 2 visiting knights from a neighboring domain, and a handful of the castle's best huntsmen and dog handlers. They plan to ride into the woods beyond the river, where deer and game birds are plentiful. Mounting his stallion, with practiced ease, the Lord signals the start. A horn sounds a bright note that echoes off the castle walls. Just a short flourish, not the full fanfare of a great hunt, but enough to announce their departure. The drawbridge is lowered over the moat, and the company sets out, hoofbeats clopping across the wooden bridge and onto the dirt road. A few villagers, working in nearby fields, pause and look up at the procession. Flashes of noble colors, the glint of sunlight on bridles and buckles, the sight of their lord riding by with spear and bow in hand. The farmers dip their heads in respect. The Lord lifts a gloved hand in a courteous wave as he passes, a small acknowledgement of his people. Soon the party reaches the cool shade of the forest. Sunlight filters down through a canopy of oak and beech leaves, creating dapples of light on the ground. The air here is earthy and rich, smelling of moss and last autumn's leaf litter. Birds startled by the riders flutter up from the underbrush. The hunters speak in low voices, if at all, ears attuned for the crack of a twig or rustle of movement indicating prey. A huntsman points out deer tracks in the soft ground, and the group follows the trail deeper among the ancient trees. The dogs pad eagerly, noses quivering at the myriad scents of the woodland. Meanwhile, back within the castle walls, the lady of the castle enjoys a more tranquil afternoon. In her sunlit solar, she sits with 2 of her ladies-in-waiting, each with embroidery hoop in hand. They have positioned themselves by an open arched window where a mild breeze stirs the embroidered draperies and carries in the distant sounds of the castle's daily life. On a polished wooden table nearby, a flagon of chilled wine infused with herbs stands alongside silver goblets, and a plate offers small sugared almonds for nibbling. The ladies chat softly as their needles weave colored threads through fabric. The lady is working on an elaborate tapestry panel depicting a flowering vine destined to hang in the chapel when complete. Her companions compliment her choice of dyed silks for the rose blossoms, and she smiles, explaining that the thread was colored with madder root from their own garden. As they sew, one lady-in-waiting entertains with a bit of news and gossip from court. She recounts a humorous anecdote about a clumsy page spilling wine on a visiting duke's lap at a banquet, all in good fun, and the duke laughed it off. The women laugh gently, their amusement tinkling like bells in the warm afternoon hush. Another lady hums an old ballad while stitching, and soon they all join in, their voices blending in a quiet song about a knight and his true love, separated by a river. Their melody drifts out the window and down into the courtyard, where a few remaining servants pause in their tasks to listen briefly, smiling at the rare sound of their mistress singing. After a while, the lady sets aside her embroidery and suggests a stroll in the castle garden. The ladies don light veils and accompany her down to the inner courtyard garden, a charming spot enclosed by a low wall, safe and private. Here, herbs and flowers grow in neat beds bordered by stones. Lavender, rosemary, and roses give the air a sweet fragrance. The lady walks slowly along the gravel paths, occasionally stopping to admire a bloom or to pinch off a dried leaf. A maid from the kitchen garden is also there, picking sage and thyme for the evening meal. She curtsies as the noblewomen pass. The lady of the castle bends to gently inhale the scent of a pale pink rose, and for a moment her worries seem to melt into the sunny stillness. She plucks a few of those roses with a thought in mind. They will make a lovely aromatic rose water when distilled, useful for perfume or cooking. Handing the blossoms to her attendants, she plans aloud to spend an hour tomorrow in the still room, preparing vials of rose water and lavender oil. It's one of her pleasant hobbies, blending herbs and flowers into soaps and scents for the household. The ladies find a cool stone bench under a trellis of ivy and grapevine, where the lady of the castle sits and gazes out at the expanse beyond the walls. In the distance, she can see the very woods into which her husband rode. She imagines him there, flush with purpose and excitement, and says a silent prayer that the hunt will be successful and safe. One of her companions begins to read aloud from a small book of poetry she brought, a romance in the local language, recounting the chivalrous deeds of a legendary hero. The verses mingle with the buzz of bees visiting the garden's flowers. The lady closes her eyes for a moment, enjoying the imagery of the poem and the warmth of the sun on her face. This peaceful hour is a treasure in a life often filled with duties and social obligations. She knows it and she savors it. Deep in the forest, the hunting party's patience is rewarded. A flicker of movement, a fallow deer stepping cautiously between the trees. The Lord holds up a hand and everyone freezes. Slowly, he signals his bowman. The huntsman silently nocks an arrow and draws, but the deer is wary. Before the shot can be released, the creature bounds off, alerted by some shift in the wind or a glint of steel. The chase is on. With a shout, the Lord spurs his horse, and the dogs are unleashed, baying as they dash after the fleeting brown shape. Through the underbrush they go, hooves thudding on soft earth, ferns swishing past. For a time there is only the pounding of the pursuit and the thrill of speed. However, the deer is swift and nimbly evades them, vanishing into a thick copse where horses cannot follow. The Lord calls off the chase, not wanting to risk man or steed with reckless pursuit through dense thickets. He laughs, breathless, the exhilaration bright in his eyes. Though they did not catch this stag, the ride itself was invigorating. Determined not to return, empty-handed, the party turns attention to smaller game. The falconer steps forward. On command, he removes the hood from the peregrine falcon's head. The bird's keen eyes catch the afternoon light as it scans the woods. Soon, a flurry of wings erupts from a nearby clearing. A pheasant, startled from cover. With a sharp cry, the falconer releases the falcon into the air. In a blur, the raptor soars and then dives. The forest canopy echoes with the falcon's piercing call. Moments later, the bird reemerges from the trees, beating its wings mightily to climb, and the falconer's whistle brings it back. Clutched in its talons is the limp form of the pheasant. The lord and knights cheer quietly at the falcon's success. They reward the bird with a bit of meat and gentle praise as the falconer carefully retrieves the game. This will be a fine addition to the castle kitchen's larder for supper. By late afternoon, the hunting party has also managed to flush out a pair of rabbits, which the hounds caught and one of the knights took down a wild duck by the stream with a well-aimed arrow. Satisfied with their haul of small game, they decide to head back before dusk. The riders emerge from the woods with their spoils strapped to their saddles, a brace of pheasants, a couple of rabbits, and the duck, all to be cleaned and prepared by the castle cooks. Their return to the castle is met with interest. Servants and villagers at the gates glance at the display of game with approval. The weary but happy lord dismounts in the courtyard, handing his reins to a groom. His boots hit the ground with a thud, and a smear of forest mud is evidence of the lively chase they had. His face is flushed and smiling. A successful afternoon sport has put him in an excellent humor. The lady descends from her solar to greet the returning party. She congratulates her husband on the day's catch, and he eagerly recounts highlights of the adventure. How cunning the deer was, how magnificent the falcon's strike. She listens with shining eyes, sharing in his excitement. The huntsmen hand off the game to the kitchen staff who have come out to collect it. The cook is already thinking of how to roast those pheasants to perfection. A stable boy respectfully approaches to offer the lord a cup of watered wine to quench his thirst after the long ride, which the lord accepts gratefully, drinking deep. As the sun dips lower, painting the sky with hints of late afternoon gold, the noble couple and their retinue begin to disperse to refresh themselves before the evening. The lord heads to his chambers to wash away the sweat and dirt of the hunt, assisted by his valet, who has drawn a basin of water and laid out a fresh tunic. The lady returns to her rooms to prepare for the evening meal, perhaps choosing a nicer overdress and checking on the arrangements for their quiet entertainment tonight. She might ask a minstrel to play softly during supper. Their hearts are light. The Lord feels the deep contentment of exercise and camaraderie in the wild, while the lady feels recharged by her peaceful afternoon and glad for her husband's safe return. In the castle as a whole, it has been a day well spent, duties fulfilled, leisure enjoyed, and the unity of court life maintained without incident. Now, as gentle twilight approaches, they transition into the evening hours, ready to wind down and enjoy the comforts of hearth and home once more. Monastic work in the afternoon. After the monks' midday meal, the abbey falls into a brief lull. Some monks take what the rule permits as a short rest, perhaps reclining on a wooden settle in the cloister or retreating to their cell for a few moments of solitude. Others prefer to walk in the cloister garden, digesting while softly reciting psalms or contemplating a passage of scripture. The heat of early afternoon makes the shaded cloister arcades especially inviting. A stillness pervades, broken only by the coo of pigeons nesting on the abbey roof and the distant chirr of cicadas in the grass. Before long, the routine of work resumes. By 2 or 3 o'clock, the 9th hour of the day, the bell summons the monks for the brief nun prayer service. Gathering once more in the dim, cool church, they chant a short set of psalms and offer prayers to sanctify the remainder of the day. This done, they disperse to their appointed labors until evening. Brother Matthew returns to the vegetable fields just outside the abbey walls. Under the gentler rays of mid-afternoon sun, he and a fellow monk hoe between rows of cabbages and pull the last stubborn weeds. Their simple straw hats keep the glare from their eyes. Occasionally they pause to straighten backs and admire the neatness of the garden, taking quiet satisfaction in growing the food that will feed their brothers. In an adjacent plot, Brother John, the abbey's beekeeper, tends to the woven straw skeps that house the monastery's bees. With the face veiled in a protective hood, he gently puffs a bit of smoke to calm the hive and checks the honeycombs. The bees drone lazily around him. If the honey is plentiful, soon they will harvest, and the sweet reward will be used for the infirmary potions, for mead, or spread on bread as a rare treat. Inside the cool scriptorium, Brother Stephen has resumed his careful copying. The afternoon light streaming through the window is strong and steady, perfect for illuminating the fine details of his work. He painstakingly adds colored flourishes to a capital letter, dipping his brush into ground lapis lazuli for a vivid blue. In the hush, the scratch of quill and occasional sigh as he shifts in his seat are the only sounds. By now, a second scribe has joined him at a nearby desk, quietly illuminating a scroll of Gregorian chant with red musical notations. Their dedication in these hours will preserve knowledge and art for future generations. Elsewhere in the abbey, the elderly brother Anselm conducts a class for the novices. In a corner of the cloister, under the arches, a half-dozen young men in plain habits gather around him on wooden stools. On a low table rests a vellum manuscript of Scripture. Anselm traces a line of Latin text with his finger as the novices take turns reading aloud, haltingly but earnestly. He gently corrects their pronunciation and offers a bit of commentary, his voice a soft drone mixing with the hum of summer insects. A novice asks a question about the meaning of a particular parable, and Anselm smiles kindly as he explains, drawing on decades of contemplation. The teaching is patient and fatherly. These youths will someday take their own solemn vows and continue the cycle of monastic life, so their formation is vital work for the community. The abbey also serves those outside its walls during these hours. Brother Damien, the almoner, has set up at the gatehouse with a cauldron of stew and some bread, giving alms to the poor of the town, who know to come on certain days. This afternoon, 2 ragged villagers and a weary traveler have arrived. They sit on a bench in the shade by the gate, gratefully spooning up the simple but nourishing soup ladled into wooden bowls. The traveler is a pilgrim, easily identified by the scallop shell badge on his wide-brimmed hat, marking him as returning from the shrine of St. James in distant Compostela. His cloak is dusty from the road, and he leans his wooden staff against the wall as he eats. Brother Damien offers him an understanding nod and asks quietly if he needs lodging for the night. The pilgrim humbly accepts. Hospitality is a sacred duty of the monastery, and any pilgrim or pauper will find what comfort the monks can offer, be it food, a place to sleep, or prayers for their journey. Under the pilgrim's grateful gaze, the almoner calls for the guest master, the monk in charge of caring for visitors. This brother greets the pilgrim with a kind smile and leads him through the gate into the abbey's guest quarters, a modest hall separate from the main dormitory where travelers can rest. There, the pilgrim will be given water to wash his blistered feet, a fresh pallet of straw to sleep on, and come supper time, a portion of the same simple fare the monks eat. He will likely be invited to join the monks for evening prayers if he wishes, experiencing the sacred rhythm of monastic worship firsthand. The pilgrim thanks them repeatedly, relief evident in his posture. He has walked many miles, and the abbey's welcome is a blessing. As the afternoon wanes, the energy of the monastery gradually shifts. Tasks are completed or put away until tomorrow. The gardeners gather their tools and wipe their sun-browned brows. In the library, a monk carefully closes an ancient tome he has been studying and returns it to its oak shelf. The scribes sand their fresh ink and set aside the day's written pages to dry. A small bell is rung in the infirmary to signal to the herb garden monks that it's time to bring in any cut plants, so they hurry in with baskets of chamomile and mint. There is a gentle sense of accomplishment in the air. Each brother has spent the day's strength in service to God through prayer, through study, through manual labor, and charity. The sun now casts a honeyed light on the cloister walkway. The monks know it is nearly time for Vespers, the solemn evening prayer. One by one, they finish what they're doing. Brother Matthew washes the dirt from his hands at the courtyard, well after his long hours in the garden. Brother Stephen carefully caps his inkwells and cleans his brushes. The novices tidy up their lesson area and help elderly Brother Anselm back to his bench to rest. Inside the chapel, candles are being lit and the choir lamps trimmed in preparation for the coming dusk. The abbey's day of work draws to a close, and the spiritual heart of their vocation, the praise of God at eventide, awaits them. With quiet anticipation, the monks turn their hearts toward the bell that will soon call them. The earth, too, seems to be holding its breath. The very breeze, stills as golden afternoon begins yielding to the purple shadows of approaching night. Twilight in the village. As the sun sinks low, the sky over the village turns shades of soft orange and pink. The farmer lifts his head from his final chore and sees the western horizon aglow behind the silhouette of the forest. Daylight is ebbing. It's time to head home. He gathers his tools, hoisting the hoe and rake over one shoulder, and calls to his son, who has run ahead to chase a grasshopper. Not far away, his wife is also finishing up, folding the dry linens she had hung out in the afternoon sun. She balances a basket of clean, sun-warmed clothing on her hip and gestures for the older children to round up the few chickens that had wandered out to peck in the lane. Obediently, a little girl shoos a hen back towards their yard. The family converges at their cottage just as the church bell tolls softly from across the fields. It's not a loud bell, just the local parish's call marking the Angelus at eventide. The farmer reflexively doffs his cap and bows his head for a moment of prayer as the bell's notes fade. Even if they cannot attend Vespers like monks, the villagers still honor the transition from day to night with a humble moment of devotion. That done, the farmer swings open the wooden door of his home and steps inside, followed by his brood. The cottage interior is dim, lit mainly by the embers in the hearth from earlier. The wife quickly sets aside her laundry basket and busies herself coaxing the fire back to life. She adds a few dry kindling twigs and blows gently until flames flicker up. A warm glow begins to fill the single room. The children settle in their usual spots, one daughter on a small stool near the hearth, the toddling youngest plopping onto a scrap of blanket on the floor with a wooden doll in hand. The oldest boy, though tired from the fields, still has energy enough to whittle at a bit of wood with his small pocket knife. dreaming perhaps of one day carving as finely as the traveling craftsman he once saw. Now the aroma of the evening meal starts to bloom. From a clay pot, the wife ladles the remainder of midday's stew into an iron kettle and adds a bit more water from the bucket. She slices in a couple of carrots and a handful of shredded cabbage gleaned from the garden, stretching the pottage to feed everyone once more. The farmer takes a turn at the cow, milking her one last time for the day into a pail. The cow lows softly, relieved of her burden. That fresh milk might go into the children's cups tonight, or be set aside for churning tomorrow. The eldest girl has collected a few eggs from their hen's nest boxes. Tonight they'll save those for the morrow's breakfast, as the stew will suffice for now. With the light outside fading, the interior of the cottage becomes the world for this family. The door is shut, and the farmer drops the wooden latch bar securely in place. The wife has lit a simple rush lamp, a reed dipped in tallow that burns with a wavering little flame. It's not bright, but together with the fire it casts enough light to see by. Shadows dance on the walls as the children quietly set out wooden bowls and rough-hewn spoons on the table. One of the little ones yawns, rubbing his eyes, prompting a fond laugh from his mother. We'll all be yawning soon enough. They gather for supper. The farmer lifts the steaming pot off the fire and ladles the thin evening stew into each bowl. It's humble fare, flavored with a pinch of salt and herbs. Alongside it, the wife portions out the remaining half loaf of bread from morning, carefully giving each person an equal piece. By custom, the father leads a brief grace, thanking God for this food and for keeping us through another day. The family echoes, Amen, the word reverberating softly against the thatch roof overhead. Then spoons dip in, and the only sounds are contented slurps and an occasional murmur of appreciation. Though thinner than their midday pottage, the warm broth soothes their tired bodies. The bread, albeit a bit tough by now, fills the belly when dunked into the stew. In the corner, the fire crackles, contributing a cozy background tune to their meal. Supper finished, the family does not immediately scatter. Evenings are precious time together after the day's labors. They linger at the table or by the hearth. The mother pulls out her spinning wheel, a simple upright wheel, and settles near the firelight to spin flax into thread. Her foot taps a rhythmic pattern on the pedal, and her fingers expertly draw out the fibers. The eldest daughter sits at her feet, watching the strand of yarn growing and winding onto the spindle. Before long, the girl may learn to spin as well. On a three-legged stool, the farmer begins to mend a worn leather harness he set aside from plowing, using his knife to punch a new hole and thread a strip of rawhide to reinforce a weak spot. These small mending tasks are easier to do now than under tomorrow's bright sun when bigger jobs call. The children, their bellies full and eyelids growing heavy, gravitate to the warmth of the hearth. The younger boy coaxes the family dog, a scruffy terrier mutt, onto his lap and absent-mindedly pets it while staring into the fire. The toddler crawls into her big sister's arms, soothed by the soft wool of the sister's apron and the gentle rocking motion as the sister hums a lullaby. It is a simple local tune, about as old as the village itself. Hearing it, the mother chimes in quietly from her spinning stool, and even the father, busy with his harness, hums along low and deep. The combined sound is a tender, wordless harmony, filling the little cottage with an atmosphere of love and security. The flames cast a warm glow on their faces, a tableau of contentment at day's end. After the lullaby fades, one of the children pipes up, asking for a story. This has become something of a nightly tradition. The farmer sets aside the repaired harness and thinks for a moment. Tonight he chooses a familiar favorite, a local folk tale about a wise old man and a mischievous fairy who tried to trick him. His voice is low and deliberate as he recounts how the clever villager outsmarted the fairy with kindness and wit. The children listen, rapt, even though they've heard this tale many times. It never fails to draw smiles when the fairy, expecting to cause trouble, is instead invited to share the village feast and ends up blessing the harvest out of gratitude. When the story ends, the children clap softly, and the oldest boy declares he'll catch a helpful fairy himself one day, to laughter from all. The hour grows late, by their standards, which means perhaps not long after sunset. The mother rises and begins to clear the bowls, and the eldest daughter helps, wiping them with a bit of clean cloth and setting them aside for washing tomorrow. The farmer adds another log to the fire, but also places a metal fire screen in front of it as a precaution. An ember popping in the night onto the floor could spell disaster, and they will soon be asleep. One by one, the children are tucked into the family's large straw mattress or settled on pallets near the hearth. Their bedding is simple, stuffed sackcloths for mattresses, woolen blankets, and cloaks layered for warmth. They murmur their own drowsy prayers, each child thanking God for specific little joys. The youngest says a garbled thank you for the puppy, though their dog is full grown. Father and mother make the sign of the cross over each child's forehead in turn. At last, the peasant couple too prepares for bed. The farmer removes his heavy outer tunic down to his long shirt, and the wife lets down her hair from the day's kerchief, brushing it out by firelight. They are bone-tired, their bodies yearning for rest. Before lying down, the farmer checks the door latch once more and peeks outside briefly. The village is quiet under a canopy of stars. A few hearth fires still send wisps of smoke from neighbors' roofs, but no one is about. Satisfied that all is well, he secures the door. In one corner of the cottage, a small shrine with a wooden cross and a dried palm frond from Easter stands. The couple pause here to whisper a final prayer, entrusting their family to God's keeping through the night. Then the mother joins the children on the big straw mattress, cuddling the smallest to her side, while the father settles not far away on his own pallet. Space is tight, but they manage. The fire is banked low, and the rush lamp extinguished to conserve it. In the darkness, the cottage is illuminated only by the faint red glow of coals. The sounds of night seep in. A chorus of crickets chirping outside, the occasional hoot of an owl from the forest. Inside, the dog circles thrice and curls up at the foot of the bed. One of the older children has already begun to softly snore, mouth agape in innocent slumber. The farmer lets out a long, satisfied sigh as he closes his eyes, feeling the ache of well-used muscles ease against the straw and cloth. His wife murmurs a few soothing words to the toddler who stirs, and then all are quiet. Under their humble roof, peace reigns. The day's labor and worries are done, and the family drifts into the first gentle stages of sleep, together, safe and warm on this medieval night. Evening in town. In the town, nightfall comes with a gradual dimming of the hustle and bustle. The shop shutters are closed, and one by one households retreat indoors. On the upper floor of the blacksmith's timber-framed house, a warm glow flickers from behind small lattice windows. Inside, the smith's family is winding down their day by the hearth. A modest fire burns, more for light than heat, on this mild evening. They have no large supper cooking. Unlike the midday meal, the evening repast is light and simple. The wife has brought out a few pieces of rye bread and a bit of cheese saved from earlier, mostly for the children who've grown peckish again. A clay pitcher of small beer sits on the table, and each member of the family sips from a shared cup, the low alcohol brew a safer choice than the town well water and a soothing end to the day. The family sits together in their main living space, which doubles as kitchen, dining, and sleeping quarters. By the hearth's orange light, the blacksmith takes a whetstone to one of his smaller tools, a chisel, giving it a few careful swipes to keep it sharp. His wife, with needle and thread, tends to mending a tear in their eldest boy's tunic. She has set an oil lamp on a nearby stool to better see her stitches. Its flame is small and steady, illuminating the neat rows of mended fabric. On the floor, the children play quietly. The younger ones have arranged a little game of knucklebones, sheep ankle bones used like jacks, giggling softly as they take turns tossing and catching. The eldest boy, nearly a young man, is entranced by the apprentice's lively recounting of a story heard at the market, a tale of a far-off city where buildings are said to scrape the sky. The apprentice, having come from another town for his training, has a trove of such stories, and the family never tires of hearing them. From the open window wafts the distant sound of a lute and laughter, likely coming from the tavern down the road, where a few townsfolk linger over ale. But that merriment is muffled, and only serves to make the smith's hearth feel cozier by contrast. He smiles to himself, content to be at home with his loved ones. The streets outside are growing quiet. A town watchman carrying a lantern makes his rounds, calling the hour in a melodic voice. 9 o' the clock, and all's well. His reassurance echoes off the half-timbered houses. The blacksmith's family hears it and shares a brief moment of gratitude. All is well indeed, and the night is calm. Before the children grow too sleepy, their mother suggests they say their nightly prayers. The household gathers near the small wall crucifix hanging in the corner. In the soft glow, they recite a familiar prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, and then a gentle Hail Mary. The children's voices are drowsy but earnest. After final amens, the mother kisses each child's forehead. It is time for bed. The apprentice respectfully bids the master and mistress good night and rolls out a straw-filled sackcloth in a corner for his bedding. The children climb to their shared loft bed under the eaves, giggling briefly as they jostle for comfortable spots until a shush from their father quiets them. The blacksmith and his wife bank the hearth, spreading the coals safely and placing a metal screen in front. They leave a tiny shutter on the lamp open, just enough to cast a faint nightlight. They do not have separate bedrooms. Instead, heavy curtains are drawn around the parents' box bed for a modicum of privacy. The couple changes into simple night clothes. The wife lets down her braided hair, and the husband removes his soot-stained shirt, giving his face and hands a quick wipe from a basin of water kept by the bedside. The fatigue of the day weighs on their limbs as they slip onto the straw mattress, pulling a light linen sheet and wool blanket over themselves. Through a crack in the shutter, a silver sliver of moonlight falls into the room, mingling with the faint glow of the banked fire. The sounds of the town have hushed. Occasionally, a far-off dog barks or a late cart wheels through on the main street, but these are isolated and distant. Within the house, the only noise is the soft breathing of children and the shift of the apprentice turning over on his pallet. The blacksmith reflects briefly on the day's achievements: broken tools mended, new goods made, his family fed and safe. His heart swells with humble satisfaction. His wife, already lying beside him, whispers about the upcoming feast day and whether they might afford a candle to burn at the evening procession. He murmurs back reassuringly that they will manage, squeezing her hand under the covers. There is a quiet, unspoken contentment between them in the darkness. Not far away, in their own small bed, the children have fallen asleep mid-whisper, leaving whatever games or curiosities occupied them for the day's next light. Down the lane, the tavern's last patrons finally depart, the lute music ceasing and the door bar clunking shut. The watchman's footfalls fade as he rounds the corner to another street. The town's great gates have long been closed, and a peace settles over the winding roads and narrow alleys. Inside the blacksmith's home, the glow of the hearth has reduced to a gentle pulse of red. The apprentice, gazing at the dying embers, says a final, silent prayer of thanks for finding a good master in a place that feels like family. His eyes grow heavy and he drifts off, dreaming of his own future forge, perhaps. In the curtained bed, the master and his wife also succumb to the sweetness of sleep. The entire household now rests, cradled by the security of familiar walls, and the unspoken trust that tonight, like most nights, will be undisturbed. The quiet in the town is profound. Only the occasional sweep of the breeze against the wooden shutters reminds that the world outside still exists. Thus ends the day for the craftsman's family, with gratitude and hope carried into the realm of dreams, awaiting tomorrow's dawn. Vespers and nightfall in the monastery. When the bell finally tolls for vespers, the sun has just kissed the horizon, and a gentle dusk envelops the monastery. One by one, dark-robed figures glide towards the church, their faces serene. The pilgrim who arrived earlier has been given a seat in the rear of the nave. He watches in quiet awe as the monks assemble in their choir stalls. Dozens of candles now cast a soft radiance throughout the sacred space, causing gold leaf in the illuminated manuscripts and icons to glimmer. Outside, the first stars prick the sky. Inside, the first notes of vespers rise in solemn chant. The monks sing the opening verses, voices blending in an ancient melody that seems to echo beyond the stone walls, as if joining the very heavens. Vespers is the evening prayer of thanksgiving. Psalms of praise flow forth, their Latin words rolling gently like waves. Deus, in adjutorium meum intende, begins the cantor, and the choir responds in kind. The pilgrim cannot understand the language, but he feels the profound peace in the music. The monks stand and bow at appropriate moments, utterly in sync, a testament to years of practice and devotion. The smell of beeswax and incense lingers in the air. As the light outside the high windows fades from purple to deep blue, the candles seem to grow brighter, symbols of prayer pushing back the darkness of night. A reading from Scripture is intoned by the prior, and the monks listen in rapt silence. Then comes the Magnificat, the great canticle of Mary. They all rise and sing, Magnificat anima mea Dominum. My soul magnifies the Lord. It is a highlight of Vespers, the melodies rich and full. The pilgrim feels a tear in his eye, moved by the beauty of voices, united in worship. He notices one youthful monk, with eyes closed, singing with a gentle smile, as if envisioning celestial choirs. In that moment, the day's toils seem distant for all present. This is a taste of the divine, a moment when earthly concerns are set aside and all focus is on the spiritual. Vespers concludes with a final prayer and a low chorus of Amen. The monks file out as dusk yields fully to night. They proceed to the refectory for a brief evening collation, a small cup of watered ale, and perhaps a crust of bread, just enough to sustain through the night. On certain days they might skip even this, fasting from the noon meal until morning. But tonight a bit of refreshment is allowed. The monastery is largely silent now, voices kept low. A few murmured blessings or quiet thanks are the only sounds as the brothers take their tiny repast. The pilgrim has been given a bit of bread and ale in the guest house as well. He eats alone, contemplating the chants he heard, his weary feet finally at rest. Before long, the great bell rings once more, now for Compline, the final prayer of the day. The monks gather in the church a last time, carrying hand candles that bob gently as they walk. The pilgrim, invited to observe Compline too, stands in the back again. Compline is shorter and more intimate. The chants are soothing, meant to lull the soul into peace before sleep. They sing the Compline psalm, in pace, in adipsum dormium, in peace I will lie down and sleep. The words resonate in the tranquil atmosphere. One elder monk's voice quavers with age, but it only adds to the poignant sincerity of the moment. After a hymn to the Virgin echoes and fades, the abbot sprinkles holy water over the silent congregation, a gentle aspersion of blessing for the night. He then intones, Benedicamus Domino, let us bless the Lord, to which all softly respond, Deo gratias, thanks be to God. With that, Compline ends. In keeping with the rule, the great silence now begins. No unnecessary words will be spoken until morning. The monks depart the dimly lit church as quietly as they entered, like shadows slipping through the cloister. In their dormitory, rows of narrow cots or straw mattresses await under the gentle watch of a single lantern. The monks ready themselves for rest with minimal fuss. They sleep in their habits, belts removed, an arrangement both humble and practical for rising at night to pray. Each finds his familiar spot. The wooden floorboards creak softly under sandaled feet. A few younger monks exchange silent smiles or pats on the shoulder, a mute good night, while the elder with the frail cough receives a propped pillow and an extra blanket from the infirmarian. The pilgrim has been offered a straw mattress in the guest house nearby. Through an open window, he can see the faint glow of the dormitory lantern and hear the shuffling of sandaled feet as the monks settle into bed. Despite his long journey, he feels a profound sense of peace enveloping this place, and finds himself whispering a prayer of thanks in the darkness. One by one, the candles are extinguished. A gentle sigh seems to pass through the dormitory as each monk lays down his head. There is no idle chatter, only the rustle of blankets and an occasional cough quickly smothered. Brother Anselm, the elderly monk, silently mouths his own private prayer for the souls of the brothers as he closes his eyes. In a corner, the novice who had been reading by the lantern finishes a verse of scripture, then carefully caps the ink on his pen and wraps up his scroll for tomorrow. He too lies down, heartened that he has survived another rigorous day in the order. Soon, the only lights are the silver beams of moonlight sneaking in and the soft red dot of the sanctuary lamp in the chapel down the hall, ever burning. Within minutes, the dormitory is filled with slow, even breathing. The monks, who rose in the pre-dawn darkness, now slip into a well-deserved slumber. Their day has been punctuated by devotion and labor, and it ends as peacefully as it began. Outside, the monastery grounds are utterly still. A night breeze stirs the tops of the fruit trees in the garden and ruffles the surface of the fish pond. An owl perched on the cloister roof lets out a mellow hoot before taking off into the starry sky. The pilgrim, half awake on his guest cot, hears it and smiles, faintly pulling his thin blanket closer. Tonight, the abbey rests under the protection of the great silence. But it is not the silence of emptiness. It is filled with the unspoken knowledge that prayers have been said and will be said again. In a few short hours, long before the rest of the world awakens, these very monks will rise in darkness to sing matins, continuing their timeless cycle of praise. For now, though, even devotion yields to the needs of the body. The abbey of stone and candlelight slumbers, a sanctuary of calm in the medieval night, until the dawn shall gently rouse it once more. Night in the castle. Within the castle, evening festivities have tapered to a gentle close. Unlike on grand feast days when torches blaze and music and laughter ring out deep into the night, this is an ordinary night of repose. After their long day, the Lord and Lady opt for a quiet evening in their private solar. A small fire crackles in the fireplace, casting a soft orange glow on the tapestried walls. They sit side by side on a cushioned settle, a chessboard between them, atop a low table. The lady ponders her next move, chin propped on her hand, while the Lord studies the arrangement of carved wooden knights and towers, a playful smile on his face. A single lute provides background melody. A young minstrel plucks a slow, soothing tune in the corner, something sweet about twilight and love, perfectly unobtrusive. A page stands by with a flagon of spiced wine should they desire a last cup before bed. Outside the solar's stained glass window, the night sky is clear and bright with stars. A nearly full moon bathes the castle's courtyard in silver. Down below, the day's bustle has ceased. A lone kitchen servant dumps a basin of ash and embers near the kitchen garden, then scurries off to her bed in the servants' dormitory. The guard on the outer gate makes his round along the battlements, his lantern bobbing and spear tip gleaming. He exchanges a brief word with the tower sentry about the fine weather. They note that the wind has died down and all is calm across the darkened fields. The villagers' lights are extinguished, and the town beyond the castle walls lies silent as well. Reassured that no threat nor alarm stirs this night, the guard continues his patrol in methodical silence. In the solar, the chess game reaches its conclusion. The lady deftly slides her bishop across the board, cornering the lord's king. He chuckles and concedes defeat. They decide it's time to retire. The minstrel ends his song with a delicate chord and bows himself out respectfully, wishing them a good night. A maid and a manservant enter to assist with the nobility's bedtime preparations. By the fire's light, the lady's maid unlaces her mistress's embroidered gown and brushes out her long hair, while the valet helps the lord out of his doublet and into a loose linen nightshirt. This done, the servants withdraw after banking the fire and lighting 2 beeswax candles by the bedside. The lord and lady's bedchamber adjoins the solar, a spacious room draped in rich tapestries depicting forest scenes and lined with wooden chests holding their garments and treasures. At the center stands a grand 4-poster bed elevated on a dais. Its canopy and curtains are of deep green velvet trimmed with fur, now drawn back invitingly. Upon the feather mattress lie fine linens and plush pillows stuffed with down. On a small table beside the bed, a silver basin of perfumed water, rosewater, and chamomile has been set for them to wash their hands and faces. They each take turns at this simple ablution, the cool, fragrant water refreshing after the warm wine and fire. Before slipping into bed, the lord moves to the chamber's oriel window and gazes out one last time at the night. From this high vantage, he can make out the faint glimmer of the river bending past the village and the dark outline of distant hills. A sense of peace settles over him. The labors of managing his estate, the concerns of taxes, or minor disputes are all put aside until dawn. The lady joins him for a moment, resting her head on his shoulder as they both breathe in the cool night air that seeps through the cracks in the casement. Above, the stars seem particularly bright. They share a quiet, intimate moment, grateful for the tranquility surrounding them and the fortune that their castle stands secure this night. After a silent prayer at the bedside, each thanking God for the blessings of the day, the noble couple climbs into their high bed. The mattress gives comfortably under them, a luxury of goose feathers that their peasants could only dream of. The lady draws the embroidered coverlet up to their chins as the lord leans over to gently extinguish all but one candle. They decide to leave a single flame alive, its wick trimmed low on the bedside in case their small child, sleeping in the adjacent nursery room, should stir and need attention in the night. Their eyelids are heavy. The lord murmurs something about the plan for tomorrow, a reminder to speak with the steward about the grain inventory, his voice trailing off mid-sentence. His lady smiles drowsily and whispers, "We'll see to it on the morrow." Somewhere in the castle, a solitary jester, off-duty and out of motley, hums a lullaby to himself in the servants' quarters as he too prepares for sleep. The chapel, now empty, holds a tranquil hush around the altar lit by a single sanctuary candle. The last of the servants have curled up on straw mattresses in the kitchens or halls where they sleep. The castle's hounds doze in the kennel, occasionally snuffling and resettling on their beds of hay. The guard in the gatehouse suppresses a yawn as he pokes the embers of his brazier to keep warm. He knows he must stay vigilant, yet on such a fine and quiet night, it is hard not to be lulled by the stillness. He reminds himself softly of his duty and resumes pacing along the wall, peering into the starlit expanse for any sign of trouble, finding none. In the Lord's chamber, the last candle flame wavers and almost goes out, but holds its tiny, steady glow. Behind the drawn bed curtains, the Lord and Lady have already slipped into a deep sleep, their hands loosely clasped beneath the coverlet. They need not rise as early as the rest of their household or the villagers beyond, so this is a time of true repose for them. The castle, so full of activity in daylight, is now a bastion of slumber. The thick stone walls keep out the chill and any noise from outside. Only the faintest sounds can be heard within. The soft crack of cooling wood in the fireplace, the muffled footsteps of a guard on the wall, or perhaps the gentle cry of an owl echoing through the courtyard. These noises only accentuate how peaceful the night is. Thus, under watch of moon and stars, the castle household finds its rest. The day's tapestry of events, from hunts and needlework to feasts and chores, has been woven to its end. Now all threads lie quiet and still until morning's light and the rooster's crow bid them to take up life's pattern once again. In this moment, all is well in the castle keep, and sleep, sweet, restoring sleep, descends on highborn and lowborn under this roof alike. Under the same night sky, midnight approaches in this medieval realm, and a profound stillness holds everywhere. From the humblest village hut to the loftiest castle tower, all lie under the same canopy of countless stars. The silvery moon casts its gentle light equally on thatch and slate, on open field and cloister courtyard, binding these disparate lives in a shared gentle glow. In each place, day's burdens have been set aside, and minds have yielded to dreams. The peasants in their cottages sleep soundly, limbs entwined in family warmth, their snores soft and untroubled after honest labor. In the town, craftsmen and their kin doze in close quarters behind timber walls, a stray cat prowling the alley outside their door, the only transient disturbance. Within the monastery, not a whisper breaks the silence. The monks rest in their narrow cots, faces peaceful in the knowledge that they have kept their vows another day. And in the castle, the nobles slumber behind thick curtains of velvet, their chamber guarded by vigilant souls who themselves fight off drowsiness to keep watch. For a few hours in the deep of night, the distinctions that rule the daylight hours fade away. Be it serf or lord, craftsman or canon, all are merely sleepers in God's embrace as the dark hours pass. If any soul stirs from slumber, perhaps a mother in a cottage adjusting a blanket over a child, or a monk briefly awake in prayer on his pallet, or a guard shifting on aching feet atop the battlements, they do so quietly, mindful not to break the spell of night's tranquility. These gentle interludes only reinforce the serenity that reigns. The earth has cooled, and a delicate mist gathers in low-lying hollows beyond the village, silvery in the moonbeam. No wind blows now. The trees stand motionless, as if listening to the silence. A lone nightingale's song has long since ceased, leaving only a profound hush. Nature itself seems to honor the resting laborers and devoted prayers by keeping calm vigil. In a few more hours, there will be stirrings. A rooster in some barnyard will feel the tug of approaching dawn and crow, its raspy announcement piercing the final hour of night. In the monastery, long before sunrise, the bell for matins will peal, and the monks will once more rise, their voices soon to float over the dark fields. The baker in town might rouse to rekindle his ovens for the morning's bread, but for now that is all still yet to come. The night is at its zenith, and sleep holds everything in a gentle, unwavering grasp. So ends this journey through a day in medieval times, ending not with fanfare, but with the soft, restorative silence of the night. The daily cycle of toil and devotion has paused, renewing each person for the morrow. All across the land, under the same vast sky, they rest, the plowman and the prince, the weaver and the nun, the child and the elder. In this unity of slumber, the medieval world finds its quiet harmony. Soon enough, dawn will paint the east, and a new day will beckon with rooster calls, ringing bells, and tasks anew. But until then, in this precious nocturnal interlude, the boring, ordinary miracles of daily life give way to the equally precious miracle of rest. The Middle Ages sleep, and with them we take our leave, beneath the gentle watch of the same eternal stars.